now we're honored to have U.S. Congressman Jack Kingston here in the studio with us during these very troubled times. We know that you're very, very busy, but of course we have to ask you about all these protests and the violence going on around the country near our embassies.
Dawn, as a member of the Defense Committee, I'm very concerned about it, particularly in light of the comments this weekend of the president of Libya, who said this was not spontaneous, but it was started by foreigners who had come into Libya several months ago. They used this California anti-Islamic film as the excuse to have these demonstrations, but apparently they were well armed, and there was a report in a British newspaper that we had some warning about it. The Jerusalem Post also had similar stories, so we need to be very concerned that this is not spontaneous and that this may go on and on for many months to come, and hopefully the only thing that will happen is these demonstrations, but should it escalate, then we don't know what direction it will go in.
It's true. We've certainly seen the Muslim community react this way on the cartoons and things like that, but I think this was really a lesson for all of us, because even some kids doing things on places like YouTube realize that their message goes around the country, and you may get more than you bargained for with something that you may think is very funny.
Yes, and we have to be very cautious about it, because this film came out in June, and you have to wonder, well, are they using this for a 9/11 pretext? Because you can always find something to be mad about. That's and particularly in a country that has free speech, there's always somebody offending somebody, and when you react violently and maybe have some people behind the movement who really have a bigger agenda. Bigger agenda at hand. And that's why, you know, you'd mentioned the sequestration. That's why it's so important, because what the sequestration does is it is a mandatory uneven haircut that's going to take place in January on the federal budget, and it cuts about 40% of the military budget. So when we talk about homeland security and intelligence on the ground and protecting American citizens in the Middle East and some of these countries, we need to have the resources to do that. But if we have a random act that's chopping the budget of the military and the intelligence community, we could have more problems.
We also know that, you know, Marines heading that way, and more troops from right here at home heading to Afghanistan because of that ongoing war. We're already stretched really, really thin.
Yes, and if you look at what has happened at the 3rd Infantry out of Fort Stewart, we have had now 7th and 8th deployments, and of course General Abrams is there as we speak. A few weeks ago, before he left, I know he attended, and I was there, the planting of a tree in honor of the 443rd soldier who was killed in Afghanistan. And so our friends and neighbors at Fort Stewart have led the way on it, but it is very scary because we don't want to undermine military training, military weapons, military equipment in a time when it looks like we're having more danger and more instability in those regions.
Well, I have to ask very quickly, of course, all these green on blue attacks, even in Afghanistan on Friday, with more of our troops being killed. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it just certainly breaks your heart. They're already putting their lives on the line, but now people they're training turning against them in calculated ways.
And it's very frustrating because we've been in Afghanistan 10 years, 1 year at a time. And we hear on Capitol Hill a lot of defense hearings where generals are saying, we've rounded a corner. We've got the Afghan troops on the same page with us. We have Pakistan pulling their weight. Our American soldiers are conquering more and more territory. And yet, if you look at the war, the results are still very, very spotty. And I believe we need to come together and have a better direction in Afghanistan.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. We appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Well, thanks.